Oh, Georgia still is always on my mind.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Green here. I want to bring you a quick mixing tip specifically on background vocals, how to handle background vocals in songs that don't feature a lot of instruments. So anything we do mixing wise with songs that have no drums or just not a lot happening instrument wise, things are going to be a lot more noticeable. So we need to be careful on how we handle those things. But I wanted to treat these background vocals with respect so that you can hear them, but I don't want them to sound like a trio. So I've got two background vocals and then I've got a lead vocal, Lana singing each part. I want you to hear the lead vocal with the background vocals, and I'll kind of talk through what I decided to do mix-wise with each of these.
'Cause Georgia still is always on my mind. Oh, Georgia still is always on my mind.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is when it comes to background vocals, try to be very specific about where the background vocals are singing. As you can see on the screen here, I've got several regions that are just completely muted. Now, Lana sang a background vocal for a lot more than what you're actually hearing. The parts that are all faded out, those have been selectively muted. So part of your arranging decision is that you can decide how often do we want to hear background vocals. I really like using background vocals as like a pop effect, just to like, I don't mean like the genre pop, but literally to just pop out or poke out of the mix every now and then just to emphasize certain phrases. So right here on the second chorus, I muted this region right at the beginning, and then I left this second region unmuted. Let's take a listen to that with just the lead vocal.
But my bags have long been packed and rolled away.
To me, that's more impactful than if I had the entire region unmuted. Depending on what genre you're in, if you're doing something like Southern Gospel or quartet type stuff, you may need to feature more background vocals. But that's just my first tip to you, is to go through and selectively mute regions that you don't want to feature background vocals that much. Okay, now on the mixing side of it, you probably saw this other video I did about mixing a lead vocal to make it stand out. I did the same exact thing on all my tracks. I loaded a mix tool plugin from PreSonus. Mix tool is basically just a gain knob, and I was able to gain up these background vocal tracks. They need to be gained up about 16 decibels each. They were just recorded very quietly, which makes sense because when you're thinking background vocals, you're not singing out as loud as you would if you're singing on a lead vocal. After the mix tool plugin, I have this VU meter. The VU meter is just set to -18 to make sure that I'm getting a good amount of gain. I'm getting a healthy amount of volume from each of these tracks. As you can see on the second background vocal, I also did mix tool in a VU meter as well. Now panning wise, I only decided to take these 50% to the left, 50% to the right. I don't want to go hard left and hard right with these background vocals because I do want them to maintain a little bit of support behind the lead vocal, but I don't want them going way out in the stratosphere. Again, if this were a song that had drums, if this were a song that had 20, 30, 40 tracks in it, I could probably get away with throwing the background vocals really far left and really far right. But there are going to be some other elements that I want to add to this that's going to give them some dimension without me having to send them so far left and right. So panning left 50, panning right 50. Okay, so next for these background vocals, I have them each going to a background vocals bus. So the output of these two tracks is going way over here to background vocals. And on the background vocals bus, I have specifically set up a FabFilter EQ. So this EQ is rolling off a lot of low end because I don't need the background vocals to be competing with the lead vocal. So I don't want all the low end rumble and resonance. I know that sounds weird. And then I've got this high shelf set to where it's taking out about 3 decibels of the high frequency content, kind of the sibilance. But then I've also got this dynamic EQ set up with that high shelf. So it's taking out even more of that sibilant stuff. Now, why would we want to take out sibilance? Again, I don't want the background vocals to be mistaken for a lead vocal. I need them to sit back in the mix. And to get them to sound like they're further away, I'm going to take off low end. I'm going to take off some of that articulation. Let's take a listen to just the background vocals here, and I'm going to unmute, or I'm going to mute this EQ move, and then I'll unmute it so you can hear it as well.
Georgia still is always always on my mind. Georgia still is always on my mind.
Okay, as you can tell, it's thinning out quite a bit. Again, I'm not worried about the low end stuff because I've got a lead vocal, I've got acoustic guitars, a bunch of other elements as well. Right after that, I've got the FabFilter Pro C2. This is a compressor plugin. I've got set to this preset called De-essing. If you go to vocals, De-essing stereo backing vocals. I really like the preset. I didn't mess around with any of these settings here, ratio, threshold, leaving that the same. But at the bottom, you have these filters. So basically, this is telling us the region that the S's are found. I took this red one here and I dragged it to the left. And what that's doing is it's affecting more frequencies than what they originally had. So originally, the de-esser was set to about here. I took the red part of the EQ, dragged it out to the left. So I'm catching even more of those S's and T's, the harsh sibilance of the background vocals. I just want the background vocals to sound a little bit muffled. Now this is one of my favorite plugins to use, and it's called the Effects Rack. This one's from Soundtoys. I can't remember when I got this. It might have been like a Christmas sale or something, but look over here on the right. Basically, with this one plugin, you have access to these great plugins like Decapitator, this Devil Lock, Echo Boy Jr., all this stuff available to you. There's a tremolo, I believe at the bottom as well. Yeah, tremolator. Then the Psy Q. I use this on different tracks in the song as well. But the one for the background vocals I decided to go with is this one here called MicroShift. It's basically like a chorusing effect. It's going to detune the vocals and it's going to spread them out a little bit. As you can see, you've got set to style 2, the detune. All of these I'm just kind of finicking around till I find something that's a little bit vibey, something that's going to go well with the song. And then what's great about this Soundtoys plugin is at the top you have this overall output and overall input. So you can actually control if any of these plugins are adding a bunch of volume and you don't have access to like a output knob, well, you can use the output knob at the very top to compensate for how much volume you're adding. Of course, at the bottom, I have a dry wet knob for how much of this MicroShift I want to be coming through. It's probably about 70%. The focus was really important because the focus is telling you kind of where's the middle of the frequency range, the frequency content of the background vocals. And then this delay knob, how loose or how tight do you want the shifting to be? So let's take a listen. I'm going to turn this off. Let's take a listen to the background vocals and I'll turn it back on.
Georgia still is always on my mind. Georgia still is always on my mind.
And I want you to hear this in context of the rest of the tracks as well, so you can hear it balanced with the lead vocal. That's something that we haven't talked about yet, but just the overall volume of these background vocals do not need to be anywhere near the same as the lead vocal. I want them to be tucked back. So using these heavy effects like MicroShift, using some of a chorusing effect, yes, it's going to be more noticeable, especially if you're doing like a pop or electronic kind of track. You're probably used to using a lot of chorusing effects. Maybe on an acoustic or a country song, you may not use something like MicroShift a lot, but I want to encourage you, poke around at it. Some of these quirkier plugins, they can get you really good results, even with songs as sparse as this. So let me close out this plugin. Let's listen to it in context of the rest of the tracks. You can kind of hear how the background vocals are fitting in. Now the background vocal bus is being sent to the vocals bus. They don't have any processing going on there, but I want you to notice this fader for the background vocals is set to -13. Like I said earlier, I clip gain all my tracks so that they hit around -18, and then my faders make a little bit more sense. So there are certain numbers that I usually start with. I have -6, -12, which this ended up being -13. So my background vocals should be 13 decibels quieter than my lead vocal if everything goes well. But let's take a listen to it in context of the song.
Change with time, 'cause Georgia still is always on my mind. Yeah, Georgia still is always on my mind. Thought leaving town would start my life.
Now, as you look at the arrangement of the background vocals, one thing that you didn't see me doing a lot of on the background vocals is compression. I'm not compressing my background vocals specifically because it's such an acoustic heavy song. I don't need my background vocals to be always smacking you in the face. I don't need them to be at a constant volume. I like that they have a little bit of fluctuation to them. Not the same with the lead vocal. I like the lead vocal to be very consistent and as upfront as I can possibly make it. But again, the main points I want you to take away are the arrangement. Make sure you go through and selectively edit your background vocals so that they come in when you want them to and they're muted when you don't want them there. Then it's controlling your volume with clip gain and panning. Pan them out to the right and left if you can. Send them to their own bus. We have the background vocals bus where you can process them together, and you can use stereo effects, just like I was mentioning earlier. MicroShift. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but I do have them going off to a plate and a chamber reverb. Those are very subtle, not an overall huge impact on the rest of the song. But I hope that helps you as you're going through and you're mixing background vocals specifically on these acoustic songs. If you're interested in how I mixed and recorded this whole song from scratch in my home studio, please hit the subscribe button. There'll be a lot more videos coming out later on how we put this thing together. And then we will get into tracks that have drums and things like that in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.